Evaluations are an important part of Toastmasters. They help us to develop by providing feedback and allowing us to learn how to give feedback as well. Camille placed first in the Division B evaluation contest and learned a lot in that experience. She would like to help others see how they can take their knowledge forward and unwrap the mysteries of evaluating others.
Yeah.
Time requested, Madam Timer, green at 10, yellow at 12, and red at 15. Please join me in welcoming the distinguished Toastmaster, Camille Gibney, with her presentation, Unwrapping Evaluations.
I like to think of a speech as a present. And as an evaluator, we are to look at the speech and unwrap what the shiny things are from the outside and see what is actually going on inside of it. Today, we will be doing that as we go through and unwrap evaluations. But before we get there, there are a few things we need to consider ahead of time. The first thing we should do is we should know what a good speech looks like. You might want to go and check out Toastmasters International. There are lots of speeches on there about past international contests. Go there, see what those speeches look like, take some notes, and see what it is that you would like to look for in a speech. You can also take the opportunity to look both inside Toastmasters and outside Toastmasters. There might be opportunities where you see or hear a speaker at work or in an outside organization. There might be things that they do very well, and there might be things that you think they could do differently. The next thing you want to do is you want to talk to the speaker. Before you evaluate them, you should know what they are hoping to get out of the speech and what they want to hear for feedback. The third thing you want to do is familiarize yourself with the project. At the very least, you should be going over the evaluation form and make sure that you know what the purpose of their speech is. There's also a PDF in every project and pathways that you can review, read through, and know what they're supposed to be doing for their project. An example would be if they're doing a project on gestures, you can read through that project and hear what they learned about speaking with gestures. That way, you have an idea of some of the feedback you can provide for them that will help them with that specific project. The fourth thing you want to do is prepare a form. I like to take a few minutes to look at the project and jot some notes down on some of the things that I want to look for in that speech. And the last thing you really want to do is consider their experience. If they're doing an icebreaker, is it the first time they've ever presented an icebreaker? Or is it the 5th time they presented an icebreaker? Based on their experience, that might depend on the type of feedback you provide them. But once you're done that, you should be ready to now sit down and listen to them speak. And this is when we really want to unwrap their presentation and see what's inside. So the very first thing you want to do is you want to listen attentively. Try to remove all distractions from you, whether you're in person or at home. Make sure that nothing will distract you and you can focus solely on that person as they give a presentation. The next thing you want to do is you want to make some notes. So jot down what you're seeing, what you're hearing, how you're feeling, how the audience is reacting. Jot down as much as you can with what you're seeing as you go through the presentation. Then you want to start paying attention to some specific things. The first thing you wanted to pay attention to is the title. That is something that I like to really focus on, no matter what kind of a speech I'm listening to. I like to write down the title because that gives me an idea of what the presentation is going to be about. And maybe I could provide them with some feedback on how they can improve that title for the next time. I also want to look at the organization of that project. First of all, looking at the opening, body, and conclusion. How did that person open up their speech? Did they bring it into the body? Did they wrap it all up effectively at the end? Did they grab your attention in the opening? Did they bring that attention back in the conclusion? What about that body? Did they have some clear points? Did they know what they're talking about? Did you get lost? I know that I've listened to presentations and realized suddenly I have no idea what they're talking about. If they give you 5 points that they're going to talk about, did you hear 5 points? I know I've sometimes only heard 3. Sometimes I get to 6. How did they do in that body? And what kind of feedback can you give them with that? I have found too that in the body, it depends too on the words that they use. Do they use good descriptives? Do they use a lot of words? I know an example would be a speech I heard where they talked about on October the 19th, we were at the police station and we had 5 people in the room. There were a lot of decorations. They go into so much descriptive that you lose the idea or the plot behind their actual story. Do they use words like glistening or sparkling? Do the words that they use benefit their speech? Does it bring their message forward better? What kind of transitions do they use? Do they go from one point to the next smoothly? Do you hear them use the same words over and over again? Is it easy for you to follow? Could they use something else for transitions? If they are talking about a vacation, maybe they can hold up different objects, like a shell when they talk about the beach, or water if there was a rainstorm. What kind of objects can they use to transition their points? Words don't necessarily stand out in the average speech, but they do stand out in an elevated speech. How can you help them elevate that speech? When it comes to use of language, sometimes people use a lot of filler words to the point of distraction, where you no longer even know what the story is actually about. Do they use fillers such as and so? Do they finish their words? Do they say filling instead of filling? Does the speech have a purpose? Do you know why they are talking about the specific speech? Who are they talking to, and how is their audience responding to them? These are all things that you can think about when you are listening to their speech. You might also want to listen to or pay attention to their gestures. How are they using gestures in their speech? Are they pointing? Are they using their fingers? Are they extending their hands to demonstrate a large object or a smaller object? Are they using their stage? If they're at home, do they use their camera? Maybe they zoom in to talk about something or zoom out to talk about something. There's so many different ways that you can use movement and gestures in a speech. Are they using that effectively? How about facial expressions? Sometimes when you have a shocked face, it brings forward the message of your speech so much more than if your face never changes. How are they using their facial expressions effectively, and are they impacting their speech? Once you have listened to the speech, a lot of clubs do give a moment of silence or a minute of silence for you to end your presentation or prepare your presentation. I'm going to assume that your speech does. So during that 1 minute of silence, this is your opportunity to prepare your evaluation. You can quickly jot down 3 things or 2 things that they think they did very well. Maybe there are some things you can connect when you're talking about the organization. Maybe you can also talk about word choice. You also want to come up with at least 1 or 2 things that they can do differently. So what kind of suggestions do they have? As you think about these things, think about giving them specific examples of what they did well. You used your gestures well because you used your fingers every time you had a point. Or maybe you pointed in a specific direction. Maybe you could give them feedback for what they could do differently by saying, next time I would suggest shrinking your hands so that people can see on camera. The better or more specific you have on your suggestions as well on what they did well, the more they will learn and grow from the speech they presented. Always remember, though, to leave them on a positive note. Whatever they did well, whatever suggestions that you have, make sure that when they walk away, they feel that they know what they did good, and also that they want to come back and present another speech. You don't want them to leave your evaluation feeling like they never ever want to present again. As you use that moment of silence, you also may want to consider how to say your evaluation. What words are you going to use? Remember that it's your opinion, and you should use words such as I heard, I felt, I saw, I understood, and try to avoid saying you. There are different evaluation methods that you could also take into consideration. There's the infamous 3-2-1, where you think of 3 things they did well, 2 suggestions for improvement, and then 1 thing they can do moving forward. I think that that is a good way to do it, but one thing you do have to consider is also timing, because sometimes that does make the time go a little bit long. Another suggestion or a different evaluation method would be using acronyms. As you listen to their speech, a word might come forward that you feel that you can use in your evaluation. For example, sugar. Maybe in their speech, you came out with it thinking sugar. So you can use that in your evaluation by saying the S is for sugar, sorry, it's for sweet. U is for using facial expressions. G is for gestures, so on and so forth. My suggestion with that is that you take some time practicing before you do it as an evaluation, because I feel that it can be very distracting, both for you as the evaluator trying to come up with all this stuff, and you might actually forget about what was effective in giving them feedback for, if that makes sense. So if you practice that a bit, then it might find it easier to come up with those sort of things on the fly. Another evaluation method you can use is to focus on each category and do both what you did well and suggestions for next time all at once. So for the opening, body, and conclusion, I thought you did good because you gave us 5 specific things that you said you're going to work on, and I heard all 5. Something you could do differently for next time might be to use better transition and give them examples for that. Don't forget that when you are evaluating, you are to speak directly to the presenter so that they know what they could do differently. I also feel that you don't have to come up with a specific evaluation method. You can just do it very basic, and that is good as well. The most important thing is that the speaker learns from their experience. After the evaluation, there's a few things you will need to do. First of all, of course, is to fill out the evaluation form. I would encourage you to fill out all pages of the evaluation form, including marking off each category on a scale of 1 to 5, because that, in my opinion, can be very helpful for the speaker. Also, my suggestion would be that even a very experienced speaker is not necessarily all 5s. Really look at them and make sure that you are grading them based on that speech. The second thing is to make sure you provide the form to the person. It could be in person, or make sure you have their email so you can send it to them via email. In my opinion, I have found in the past, the evaluation forms to be very helpful. So make sure you take the moment to send it to them. If they are in person, you can also take a moment to talk to them and give them further words of encouragement. The next thing you want to do is review any notes to see if what you took out of the experience. It's not a bad idea to review your notes and almost evaluate yourself to see if you still agree with what you said. And last but not least, seek out an evaluator so that you can learn from your experience. See what other people are hearing from your presentation and see if you agree with them. You can also ask for any clarification at that time as well. So hopefully today you've learned a little bit about how to unwrap your present or your speech. And so the next time you go to evaluate someone, you have a few more points to consider.
Thank you so